Hello and welcome to Weltall podcast, where we smoke all the opium so you don't have to. I'm your host Shinza Banshou, and as always, I'm glad to have Zach along with me on this ride.
Hi, hello.
Hey there! So some exciting stuff going on, huh?
Yep, I'd say.
Last episode took us quite a while to release, but this time we did get some new material to discuss way sooner than we expected. And I don't even mean the stuff that took place on the 10th of August, which we did expect. It actually turned out to be pretty minor. But anyway, so today we are again not going to have any particular topic besides the latest news, although the news are major enough to be considered a topic in and of itself, I suppose. And
hmm
as always, we are going to answer some of your questions. Well, all of your questions because we don't get that much, which is a shame, really. Uh, but anyway, I hope you are ready to stay with us for like 2 hours or so. Uh, so the first thing we can discuss is that uh, on August 10th, as we were promised, the latest artbook of Yusuke, Omega Ewigkeit, has been released. In fact, we did get a small glimpse of it on the 7th of August. G himself posted some pictures on his Twitter, including some artworks which we have never seen before, which naturally got people quite excited. And one of those pictures was a new illustration for Shinga or Mifra, which surprisingly doesn't really belong to her depiction on the throne or her depiction in the Pantheon's main CG. So I suppose it's something like, well, it's not a touch per se, but it's more like a card
A concept,
illustration.
a concept art,
Yeah, or
sort of.
something like that. Uh, Although it does seem detailed enough for me to see it in the final version of the game, actually.
Yeah, it's like in Fate Grand Order, where you have the first three ascensions are like basically like a character standing in a pose, and then only the final version of it has like a unique art,
Yeah, yeah.
kind of
And
like that. Yeah.
we do have a small inclination towards things being the same in Pantheon, actually, because we did have some CG looking illustrations back from the TV advertisement, back from the Blu-ray cards and stuff like that. And on the other hand, we also have like Tachia like pictures from again the CM, from the other less major sources which escape me right now, but basically, yeah, it's pretty likely to be the same way in Pantheon as well. So I expect this illustration of Shinga to be like her first three poses or so.
Yeah, possibly.
Yeah, and on the same spread as Shinga, we actually got a look of what seems to be a brand new character. Although, because she was on the same spread as Shinga, many people assumed it's also her, but like in another incarnation, because
Red
that's what
hair.
happens when you have like four different versions of Ren, and don't even get me started on Mercurius.
Yes.
So yeah, people assumed it's Shinga because she has red hair, she has red eyes, although both of her eyes are red right now.
Yes.
So the main theory was that it's either Shinga before she ascended to the throne, or it's her sensory, which
It's possible, I
yeah,
guess.
yeah. uh, which takes a major role in her own world of Ahura Mazda. And
Though,
hmm?
well, it's entirely well. We'll go into speculation later, but because of once we get to the Vita side, but it's possible that it's very possible. But it is a little weird because she has the neck because we originally got it when we originally got this art. We basically had like Mifra's like concept art, and then like on the next page, you could see like the silhouette of this character. And then
Yeah,
once people actually got the so people thought that like since they're on the same spread, they might be the same character, but apparently that's not quite the case because once people actually got the art book, we saw that the next page actually has the concept art for this character as a whole. So yeah, it's a little different. There's also an odd aspect to her. She has an animal tail.
yeah. Although we didn't exactly see it on the 7th of
Yeah,
August because
yeah,
the cat didn't quite have it. But yeah, she does have a tail, and I'm not sure what exactly,
that means yeah.
what kind of tail it is, but I assume it's like a cat tail.
Yeah, it looks like it's an animal tail. It's furry.
Yeah, basically.
It's a furry tail. I want to touch it, but uh, yes, but like
Get it
we
together.
yeah, but
Resist the
like
tail.
stay loyal to Tamamo. No, but yes, it's the specula is going all over. Nobody really knows exactly who this character is going to be. She's also very different from Mifra in the way, like people originally thought because of a bit of same face syndrome and her being red hair and very smart, people thought she might be Rusalka, but she has also a very voluptuous figure. You see that she has like a very noticeable cleavage,
Yeah,
all
yeah,
sorts of things. Yeah. In terms of her proportions, it does kind of feel that Mifra is entirely possible
yeah.
because Mifra is also very curvy from what we've seen. But yes,
So yeah,
that's so.
that's one shot we had. We are in going back to G's tweets. We also had a spread of the main visual of Pantheon, and we had some spreads of the uh, character artworks which were featured in the CM. Most noteworthy being Sakura Ray, which we didn't really get a good look at because, well, there was a lot of characters and she was like in the second to third row. So
Mhm.
it was also the first time we saw her from head to toes in her LDO attire, which does look very cool on her.
Yes,
She's a good woman, that she
yes, yes,
is.
she is.
So that's basically what we had until the 10th of August. When the art book came out, and although neither I nor Zach actually have it on our hands, enough people got it so we actually can talk about its contents. So basically, all of its contents were already known. Well, as we have mentioned before, it's mostly there to collect all the promotional artwork which have been done over the last few years by G because of the Dies Irae renaissance, so to say. But alone the artworks which we already know, we do have some new artworks. It's not much, but still we get uh, the two artworks which we already mentioned, so Mifra and the unknown tail girl, and we have two artworks of the Amaterasu representatives, which we are currently calling Sakura and Tsukuyomi because of
I
Uh,
think if we're going with Tsukuyomi, we might as well call the pink-haired girl Amaterasu, but Sakura
well,
is
it's
definitely
a bit more complicated because Amaterasu includes like Rindo and Habaki and all that
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. The thing is, we don't know where they are. We don't know
Yeah,
what happened to them. But yes, yes. But we go with Sakura because, like we've said before, Masuda has confirmed that her pink hair is based on the Sakura, and on top of that, there's also an art that appeared on the uh, later side that shows
mm-hmm.
this girl looking up at a sakura tree. So
Yeah,
the the illusions are very very clear here.
yeah. Right, so, well, there isn't really much to talk about here, really, besides the fact that she's still insanely cute. Like,
Yes,
how is it even possible to be so cute?
yes,
I have
yes.
no idea.
It's a beautiful smile. I love the smile.
Yeah,
She's very cute.
I actually really like her hair, which, well, I hope she doesn't trip on it, but it sure doesn't look safe.
Yes.
Well, although I suppose it does give her some charm too. And the Tsukuyomi girl is looking way more constrained, I'd say. And well, she doesn't really look like Rindo here, so
Yeah, she doesn't.
I suppose that's one fear is shut down. Although
We don't know.
this artwork alone is not enough to disregard that theory.
Yeah.
Uh, Besides those four artworks, we also got four different artworks which we did see before, but now we can actually see in good quality. So those are of Ren, Mari, Shiro, and Rusalka in their uh, CG looks, so to say. And Ren and Mari we did have on Pantheon's website before the major update, but without the backgrounds. And Shiro and Rusalka we had in the CM, although because it was moving and stuff, we didn't get a clear shot of either of
Yeah.
them. And now we can actually see all of them. And well, I suppose we can discuss the backgrounds, although there isn't.
They're not terribly clear.
Well,
I did kind of notice something interesting about Shiro's background. Okay,
yeah.
we'll get.
Okay. So, starting with Ren, I suppose. So, it's actually caught my eye the most, I suppose, because it does look a whole lot like his Kamunagura from Dies Irae, and
You mean because of all
Gristan.
the blade? Oh, it's
Yeah, yeah,
Kaminagura.
yeah,
Oh,
yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah, 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 yeah,
Not his Yato Kamunagura.
yeah, yeah.
But yeah, so basically his Kamunagura is a clock with no hands, and it does look an awful lot like the same thing, besides the fact that it's blue. And I suppose it makes sense to make it blue because we also have the anime which had it as one huge iceberg, and it's like something in the middle.
Didn't his Kaminagura also have the snake motive?
I'm not sure it had, but
I think
uh,
I think it had like maybe I'm confusing it with Tokuyo's.
yeah,
Maybe.
basically in Dies Irae it was in the Mitsudamoen, and so in the rear route
Oh yeah, right.
uh, where he threw away his connections to Mercurius. But in Kajiri Kamuikagura, the Yato's Kamunagura was a bit more snake-like, yeah.
Hmm.
So clearly we have no snakes here, at least not apparently. And so yeah, it's a bit more similar to what we had in the series.
Hmm.
And going next to Mari, we have first of all we have this huge circle of flowers behind her, which does look a bit similar to what she had in her depiction in Kajirika Muikagure. Although it's not the same thing, of course, because that was a Buddhist symbol from what I believe. And this is more like, mm, well, it might be like a halo or something, but not exactly the same
Hmm.
thing, I guess. And behind her we have what seems like a wasteland covered in even more flowers. I suppose that makes sense, but since we don't actually know much about her world besides what we have seen in the ending of Dies Irae, I'm not sure why uh, she has this particular background, really.
I guess we'll find out. Like we don't have data itself doesn't give us a really good look, but we'll find out as we'll go
Yeah,
along.
basically,
I'm sure.
all we can do right now is pass Amahen.
Yes.
And next we go to Shiro, which
Yes.
we did see that he's like shooting the camera back in the CM, and that's kind of like him breaking the fourth wall because
Yes. Yes.
he considers himself the protagonist of the story and stuff like that. So that makes a lot of sense. And he also have the chains from Rusalka Zananerbe, which is kind of weird because we also have Rusalka safe and sound right here, but
All right.
I suppose that's the
And there's
strongest
also
form of Shiro which
there's
we
also
have.
also the chains also have the Gregorius symbol,
Yes, Georgios.
Georgius symbol,
Yeah,
Georgius symbol. Yes.
yeah, okay.
And another interesting fact is that if you look at the background, he's in a club. You can actually
Yes,
see a set of drums. Now that makes sense because his base of operations was the limitless, was the bottomless pit. Excuse me. But another interesting part is that Judas Strife, another one of Naraka's observers, also had an introduction scene in a club.
yes, right.
So it's actually kind of interesting how the
So would you say that we should expect Judas's picture also have him in a club as well as
uh,
other
I
sensories?
I don't know because Judas uh, see it really depends on how he goes about it because Judas as a whole actually has a lot of story to him,
Mm,
you could say,
yeah, okay.
like how he got the Strife last name, for example.
Mhm.
He didn't originally have it. All sorts of stuff. So, I don't know, but it's just interesting how they both have this club this kind of, shall we say, this rock star almost kind of
Well, yeah, I suppose.
but yeah, but I think it's interesting because you could have. I think it's interesting that they specifically chose the club and the set of drums because they could have easily just put the bike in there, and the bike is much more iconic.
Yeah, and they could have also
But
had
put
Ellie
in
along
Ellie.
with
Yeah,
him.
they could have put in Ellie because Ellie is hitching a ride on him. You could say she never actually gets powers. She hitches a ride on him and on Ren once they kind of ascend to something beyond. Um, so yes, it's interesting that they chose this. Is all I'm saying.
Yeah, okay. And I suppose we can still have Ellie as a separate character because we do have a lot
Yeah,
of normal people so far, like even Kasumi is apparently going to be in the
yeah,
game as a
yeah.
recruitable character. And there's also Keishiro stuff, which might be something like that. Anyway, and we also have Rusalka, uh, who is still as great as ever.
Yes, yes, she is.
So she's uh, so there is a lot to process here. So if you have already known this, it's okay. But I'll just in case go over all the details. So she's riding a broom, and she has a witch hat, which
With a little
makes sense.
bell. With a little bell.
Yes. She also has a lot of handprints all over her clothes, which does make sense if you consider her craving, which is to pull people's legs and not let them go. And
Yeah.
she's not actually flying, it's her own shadow hands putting her up and carrying her on her broom. And I did actually hear some theories about how exactly witches were able to fly in the Middle Ages, and some of those said that it was just their familiars or demons carrying them. So I suppose it makes sense to have it work the same way to here as well.
Hmm.
But that's basically it, I guess, because again, most of the artworks you could have seen before in other sources. And besides, the book doesn't actually have any text or descriptions or anything to read, so it's just a huge block of eye candy. Which is not to say that it's bad, of course. It's not, because G is God. But if you wanted to pick it up to get some latest scoop of Pantheon, you probably uh, shouldn't. But yeah, it also has some artworks which weren't available before, besides some rather hard to obtain merchandise, so do pick it up if you are a G fan in any capacity.
Hmm.
And so that was basically everything that we were expecting last week, because, well, there was also the soundtrack, but again, neither of us have it on our hands right
And
now,
yeah.
so we can't really discuss it right now. Hopefully we will be able to soon, but even then, well, its music is good and there isn't much to say about it, besides maybe discussing our favorite tracks.
Hmm.
However, that is not the only thing that happened since last time, because as of this recording, yesterday, the Switch website got updated with the information about the uh, new side story, which is supposed to be like a prequel to Pantheon. And this one was a doozy. So, not only did we get 4 new CGs, not only did we get a short description of the story, and I don't actually mean as short as like, well, there is a group of gods and the
On this day,
conquest.
the gods gather. Yeah, it's not
Yeah,
that.
yeah, that's basically what we have known so far. But now we know much more,
It's
and
actually really annoying because every time, like, we're gonna get to it, but like every time we think maybe like some things got retconned, but then we find out they didn't. Maybe the commercial was misinformed, but it wasn't. We'll get to it,
yeah.
but yes.
Okay, so, and lastly, the website update also revealed the entire voice acting cast of the new
Of side,
characters.
of the side story, at least, yeah.
Yes, and we also had Masuda himself talking about it a bit on his Twitter, which we will discuss as well.
Yes.
And he does add some stuff on top of all that.
As he
Uh,
always does.
yeah. So anyway, I suppose we should begin with the CGs, because that's the first thing you notice when you open the website. So, uh, that new girl, which we have first seen in the artbook, appears again, and she apparently plays a pretty major role because she gets 2 CGs out of 4 here.
Yes, she does.
So again, it might mean that she is related to Mithra in some way, because Mithra is basically one of the most important gods in the pantheon so far.
And the name of the story is Zoroastrian.
Yes,
So
yes.
Mithra is like a Zoroastrian thing. So yeah.
Because of all of that, people kind of assume that it really is Mithra, or at least like her sister or her sensory or something like that. Which kind of brings the question of who is the young man in the same CG as her.
It was the child. She
Yeah,
seems. Yeah.
I have no idea if it's a child or not actually.
It looks like a child to me from the shape of the head. It looks to me like we don't know, but it looks to me like a child. And
It
also because
also,
she's also squatting down.
yeah,
If
yeah,
it
right.
helps. She's squatting down. So it seems like it's a child. Also, there's a blurb above that where she basically says that she doesn't want the child to be to like live the same way she did. Something along the
Yeah.
lines of
Yeah, so we have a lot of Japanese text on the website, and unfortunately, we
yes.
didn't have the time to translate it all. Well, I did, but not in English. So anyway, some
Basically, kind of right off the top of my head, it's kind of like along the lines of living with purpose or with a mission. Is that happiness or is that suffering? I don't know the answer yet. I don't know the answer to that, and I can only
Atakara.
no no.
So
I can only yearn for a world that's beyond my reach. Not achieving anything in particular, whiling away the days. I want you to live that kind of life which I couldn't have achieved.
yeah,
Something along the lines of that.
yeah, yeah. Something like that I should mention here is that the first personal pronoun used here is boku. So I assume that it's a man talking here.
Yeah, but we don't know because Goku, like anime characters.
Yes, and having a bokuko would be pretty nice, actually.
Yes, would.
Anyway, so when I saw the website, I assumed that the narration is by some unknown character, which we don't know yet, and uh, he wishes for this girl to find herself a life which is better than his. But
I
we,
actually, I actually saw it the other way around because, well, she's holding the child and she is holding the child's hands, and his head looks like it's leaning. He looks like he's like looking at the ground, like he's crying, at least to
yeah,
me.
yeah,
So it looks like she's trying to like encourage him, and like if we're assuming that this is Mifra, then like it could be like some people aren't sure because the child has dark hair, so people are uncertain if it's maybe Ren or if it's possibly actually Muzan because
yeah,
Muzan also
yeah,
has dark. Very popular theory says it's Muzan, so it's actually possible that this is
sensory.
Mifra's sensory, and you can go in all sorts of crazy directions with this, like that Muzan was basically in some way either close or like a protege to Mifra Sensory, and sending to Godhood, he basically killed his mentor. It's like you can take this in all sorts of directions, and this is entirely speculation.
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is this is just my imagination running around, and if history is of any kind of indication, Masada will probably think of something much better than I can.
yeah.
But
One thing that should be mentioned here that we kind of missed is that if she really does have a cat tail, then it only makes sense to think of what did Zoroastrianism think of cats in general. And it only takes one Google search to see that cats are not mentioned in literary Persian sources until late Sasanian times. In Zoroastrian mythology, the cat is said to have been created by the evil spirit, and in the Pahlavi text, it is classed in the much despised wolf species. So if it really is Mifra, or her sensory, then she is currently on the side of evil.
Well, I think this is in like this is a fear you even mentioned back when the site update only came out, but like the possibility of like of her um, of her Afrochromia being like representative and or possibly having a split personality. So it's actually
Yeah, yeah,
possible that like her bad, shall we say, or evil, quote unquote evil, her quote unquote evil incarnation would have red eyes, while her quote unquote good incarnation would have blue eyes.
yeah.
So you know, it's entirely possible, and we currently, of course, have no way of knowing. This could be an entirely unrelated character. Possibly, maybe just someone out. Maybe just someone from Muzan's lifetime.
Yeah,
Like possibly just
also, uh, another theory from back when we had Masa the Complete artbook released is that Muzan would ascend to the throne by the influence of his opposite King of Evil, which would make sense to be Narka's observer. And after the art book was released, we did have some small theory that it could actually be Narka's observer side, because nowhere does it say that it has to be male, so why not have a female once in a while?
yeah. That's entirely possible for Naraka's observer to
Yeah,
actually be.
but that's some heavy opium smoking going on.
Yes, that's very opium. Yes, and we're just really. This is wishful thinking. We just really want Renyama to voice her, so it's.
Well, yeah, I suppose.
We
Although,
just really want a. We
well,
really want a Renyama girl. We really
well,
do.
now that we have the voice acting cast revealed, that's not really the case because Ren Yama isn't even
Is it?
on the
Yeah,
list.
he's not listed for the side story. Yeah,
So we won't have Naraka or none of his observers.
sad.
Okay, well, all in due time. Okay, so besides that, we have three more CGs, and although we can't really say much about either of the Amaterasu ones, besides the fact that, oh
They're
my gosh,
gorgeous.
she's so cute.
Yes, she
Why
is.
she's so cute? I don't like actually characters like this, but I just can't. Uh,
Yes,
anyway,
she's very cute. She's very cute. Her eyes are beautiful.
yeah. Anyway, so the last CG features the Catwoman once again, and her floating in space, because that's apparently what cats do.
Well, you know, it could be like her like ascending to the throne in some way. We don't know.
It might be, yes. Or she might actually be traveling through a bit more of a conceptual space rather than
Could be. Could be.
literal space. So she might be traveling between the thrones, or traveling
Yeah, it could be.
from the outside world into the throne world and stuff like that. But yeah, I do think of all those pictures of cats with space in the background when I look at it. The CGs aren't really anything special. Well, they are good, but not really worth
They're
discussing.
not as informative as you'd want them to
Yes,
be.
yes. But we do also have a nice big blurb of the story.
Ah, yes,
So,
yes.
are you ready?
Again, I haven't translated it, but it's gonna be.
Yeah, I
I'm
can.
gonna, I'm gonna try off the top of my head.
Yeah.
The first line is actually interesting because it's from the CM. It's
Yes.
Mari's line from the CM. It's this place is ruled by anger or by wrath, which is what Mari says in the TV CM.
Yes,
Um,
and then people assume that's because Naraka is always angry until they need to defeat him or something like that.
Okay, yeah. So this place is ruled by anger. So the girl feels, and this is what the girl feels and what she is sure of. A battle for the divine throne that spans 7 ages. Um, excuse me, excuse me. Um, a battle that spent 7 ages revolving the world of the divine throne. Um, what the most important aspect of that is to feel indignation and anger towards something. That is a passport. That is a passport that grants you a. It is a passport to a privileged class. Um, a high rank unique to those who feel deep anger. Um, the day of wrath, Dies Irae. The only exception is the twilight. Is the goddess called the twilight. Um but an exception is also another name for Grim Reaper. Um, Once the rules are broken, collapse begins. Therefore, now is the time to settle all the scores. The truth smiles. The truth smiles. The remorseless is resolved. The morning star challenges all riddles. Uh, the mercury is revived. The gold exalts. Excuse me, not exalts. English is hard. Yes, he exalts. It is exalts. Pardon me. The moment, and the twilight weave their dreams, and Hajun senses the true enemy. And what will the dawn see? On that day, all the gods will gather, and the curtain will rise in the final battle.
Okay, I think it's pretty obvious that the woman that is mentioned here is the
Mara.
same. Well,
Oh, the one from the beginning.
yeah, yeah. So
Okay.
it's still the same Catwoman that is all over the website right now. So at this point, a lot of people are actually thinking that she might in fact be the protagonist of Pantheon, because she really does feel like an outsider which will, along with the player, learn about all the thrones and gather all the allies to face some unknown enemy.
I personally don't know about that. I think the up until now, all the hints we've gotten is that the protagonist would actually be Sakura, but well, we don't know.
Yes, besides that, there is also a theory that she is basically arriving in the present era, so the seventh throne, and because of that, she kinda joins Amaterasu, and that is why Amaterasu is like your starter, like Mashu, sorts.
Perhaps,
And
perhaps.
after that, you can get all the other gods and their subordinates from the gacha, so to say.
Using the power of your wallet, yes.
Yes,
Um,
and
uh,
Mifra, I suppose, uh,
yeah.
which is supposed to help with the gacha in some way. But we
Which is
will get back to that
once again
later.
which is once again a little weird because the Pantheon ability should belong to Sakura, as far as we know.
Well, yeah, that's the weird thing, really, because uh, we do know quite a bit about the Amaterasu, and they don't really have any ability like that, besides the fact that they allow any rule to take place uh,
Yes,
during their age.
they're like tolerant of other. They're tolerant and are influenced actually by other rules. They took a deep influence at the very least from Mari and Ren.
Yes.
Um,
So it's, I suppose it's a bit too early to say, although uh, it is a bit more likely at this point. And besides, that also means that we still don't actually have a male protagonist, which is kind of weird, but not entirely uncommon, I suppose. Uh,
well, I suppose we'll see. I'm not buying into the protagonist theory yet because I feel she's just attached to apparently too characterized right now to be the protagonist. Like I'm assuming the protagonist is supposed to be us. It is entirely possible they'll be going for a linear. That the story itself will be linear and
and the
like
social aspect will be just the
will just be a yeah, it will just be a gameplay thing. But I don't know. I don't know because well, we'll get to Tomasi's tweets
Mhm.
and we'll get and we'll discuss it. But yeah, I think that like there should be more room for like for self insertion in this kind of
I suppose so. I don't mind if we don't get it, but uh, a lot of people actually do care about it. So okay, and besides that, it also feels like she's at least pretty high up on the power level scale because she can actually see the world of the divine throne from the outside, so to say. And
this is speculative because we don't know. Another point worth mentioning is that Masada did say that this story takes place the day before Pantheon starts. Um,
yes,
so this is supposedly takes place after Kagura, Kagura, after Dies Irae. All of these gods should, for all intents and purposes, be dead.
well,
Um,
besides Amaterasu.
yes, besides Amaterasu, yes. And this really brings a question: like, will this whole scene we have here with the girl holding, with like the Catwoman holding this child's hand, um, what's it all about? Is it like people are assuming this is Muslim? So is this like a flashback, or is this something that takes place chronologically right before this year Pantheon begins?
Yeah,
Um,
well, at this point I would assume it's more of a flashback thing because it's apparently very important because you have it as the main CG on the website and you have it as the first blurb of text, so you wouldn't do that if you didn't want people to pay attention to it. Um, either way, what else? So yeah, um, because she is thinking of the throne itself, it means that she is at least as knowledgeable of it as the other gods. But as we know, all the seats are already taken, so she's either a new god which appears in the age of Amaterasu to take it for the eighth time, or she does actually come from outside or from some other parallel universe like Mercurius did. And that is probably what is depicted on the last CG, that she
perhaps.
is entering this world of sorts. Uh, but yeah, because of all of that, it does feel like if she is not a god, she is at least about as powerful, which does naturally lend itself to her being the protagonist of some kind, or at least a very important character.
Again, this is all speculation. You
Yeah,
like,
yeah,
well, like, don't take this as a statement.
yes. Another thing that kinda messes things up is that uh, it talks about the Twilight being the exception to the general rule of people being mad, and that's what lets them ascend to the throne, which is kind of true actually. Besides maybe Mercurius. And if Mari is the exception, then why did she have to wait until the 7th age? Because it does say here that therefore now is the time to settle all the scores. And what is now? If it's the Age of Twilight, then where did Hajun and Amaterasu come from? If it's the Age of Amaterasu, why did she have to wait?
That's an interesting point, and it kind of leads to all sorts of thoughts. Like, we do know that Mari's age was, if I'm not mistaken, it was short, right? Like, Hajun popped up fairly.
It was pretty stable, if nothing else.
No, it was stable, but it was, if I recall correctly, it was one of the shorter ages. Like, it was one of the shorter, one of the shorter
say
rules.
For sure. I know Mercurius was the longest.
It was the longest, of course, because you loop time. But it's possible that, well, I don't know. Probably because Mari isn't confrontational. But it does. True. But like I think the oddest line in all of this, there are two lines that popped up to me. An exception is another name for a Grim Reaper. Like, and that
we did actually mention it a while ago. Kind of noticed it that when a new god faces the god of the current age, basically the first thing he does is that he contradicts the current rule in some way.
Mm-hmm.
And that is what gives him or her the power to actually oppose the current god. So, for example, in Hajun's case, we have him actually rising to the conflict in the first place. And that means that gods cannot actually coexist in Mari's rule, and because of that, the other gods which were protecting her actually started to intrude into each other's realms. So they could not reach their fullest potential because the rest of the gods were in the way.
I reread this scene and I'm not sure because it's not quite clear if it's the very act of opposing her or simply the fact that he, at that point, had already harmed or killed her. Like, because her presence, she wasn't around to give that stability. But I think that's not so much. I think this is just a weird line in general. Like, I think it's a little weird. Now, the other one that's interesting is that Hajun sensed the true enemy. Now, this is a big one because what Hajun sensed was the observer. He sensed Naraka.
Yeah, and that's kind of what we all assumed when the TV CM came out. Is that
because
if we are facing Naraka,
Mari did say that we're here to subjugate Naraka's rule.
Yeah.
So it's it's all really.
So people kind of assumed that it was him who actually messed up Hajun to the point that he destroyed the entire world. So it makes sense that Hajun would actually be, at least to some extent, cooperative enough to face a common enemy. But now it's a bit less apparent, really.
It's weird because up until now we were talking about possibly an outside enemy of some sort. That's why the throne was made. and now it's just like keeps going back and forth between outside enemy, Naraka, outside
Yeah,
enemy, Naraka.
basically, if it
Like,
wasn't for that Pantheon drama, which we didn't actually hear, it would be a bit more simple, I would say. But now we are kind of getting mixed signals, and who knows where all of it is
yeah,
going to lead. But uh, yeah, as you said, we are kind of going back and forth between thinking that stuff got retconned and that stuff actually comes together in a whole picture.
yes.
And well, either way, we do have to subjugate Hajun in some way to make him fight on our side. And luckily, we will actually have him in this side story, and that is going to be one very cursed image.
Yes, yes, it will.
Well, we will get a very cursed image when we will have his throne picture in few
Yes, we
weeks.
will. Yeah, well, I mean, like the thing about Hajun is that he's very well. Obviously, he's very self-centered. Self-centeredness is his credo, but like we've already seen his throne. We
Yes,
have already seen his throne, so it's like
yes, but we also saw Mercurius' throne, and it's pretty different from what we have seen in Pantheon so far.
not that much actually. It's pretty one-to-one with what we've seen with the anime. It just looks better.
Yeah, I suppose. And we also had the CG from Dies Irae proper, where we didn't actually see the throne itself, so it is a bit more of a new thing on that
Yeah.
front. Anyway, I suppose that's all we have to say about this
About the
text so
blurb,
far.
about
Yes.
the blurb, yeah.
Well, we can take apart all the gods, but it's basically what we have expected either way, because we do know that all the gods are going to appear. We do know their personalities to some extent. So, seeing stuff like uh, Reinhardt being really excited about facing a new enemy is really not that unexpected.
Yeah, well, we'll get to that in a bit.
Yeah, yeah. And then we have a really small window with all the names
Cast.
of the cast. Yes.
And oh boy, that caused a little storm.
Okay, so of course we do have all the veterans. So we have Yu Yan voicing Mari, most probably. We have
Mhm.
Suwabe-san voicing Reinhardt, most probably. We have Toriumi-san voicing Mercurius and Ren. And we have Miyashita-san voicing Hajun.
Yes.
And maybe Habaki. I don't know.
Yeah, Yamashita.
And besides them, we have 6 new names, which is
Yes.
quite a lot actually, because uh, if you are keeping count, we have uh, 7 thrones. We have Reinhard and Ren as the extra gods,
Mm-hmm.
and that's it. So the extra 2 characters are most probably Tsukuyomi and the Catwoman. Because if nothing else, they do have CGs, and
So they're set to appear, yeah.
yeah, and I really doubt that they would get CGs without actually having a speaking part.
Yeah.
So yeah, that makes it 6 names for uh, 5 gods and 1 Catwoman, and that is 2 male voice actors and 4 female voice actresses. So the very first name on the list is Ito Kentaro-san.
Yes.
Why should we care about him?
Okay, Ito Kentaro is not as prolific as he could be. I feel like I think his most prolific, like the role people would know him the most for, would be Renji from Bleach. He also had some major roles in Arage and Viens. For example, he was Kuro, the protagonist of Demon Pain. He was Gato Manji from Fate Extra. And he also worked for Light in the past.
Yes.
He actually voiced Amakasu, one of the antagonists of the Senshinkan franchise. So we have a Makasu man voicing a god.
Yes.
Now, in terms of speculation, I'm guessing he would be Muzan, because Muzan is he's visibly very warrior-like. So, and you know,
he's pretty sleek on top of
he's
that.
pretty slick, and you know, Kentaro has a very kind of like, I'd say kind of a manly voice, I guess.
Well, he has a good range, actually.
He has a good range. He has like a very, like, I don't know, like a more aggressive. Let's just say that it's not so much that I see him as Muzan as I have trouble seeing him as Satanael. Which, by the way, and this makes perfect sense, and if we'd thought about it, we probably would have noticed, but Satanael's voice actor got changed. And it makes perfect sense, because Paradise Lost is 15 years old.
Yes, and besides that, his voice actor didn't actually work that much in the industry.
Yeah, and
he has like 2 roles. Let me just look up his name, because it would be a real shame to mention him. So it's Yamaka Watsuya-san. He has 4 roles on VNDB, including Satanael.
Yeah, well, that doesn't say much. He might have roles like outside of that, but regardless, mostly because Satanael is like doesn't have any arrow voices in this game. It's like he doesn't have anything like that. So yeah, but it does kind of call into question how many of Paradise Lost characters will retain their voice actors. Like, we know Judas is still probably going to keep his voice actor, and there's Kawashima-san is also voiced Carmine. So you know, we don't know if Carmine will appear because she's entirely civilian character, and to be honest, like, she's only there to like kind of develop Ryle as a character, so I don't know. But if so, we'll have another Kawashima character in the game. But will Rill's voice actor stay the same? I hope she will, because she has a very.
I do like most of the voices there, actually. So
No, I like, people kind of over the years, have kind of said that Satanael's voice is like too monochromic, kind of too boring, and I think it suits him personally.
Yeah, same.
But yeah, but like, jumping ahead in the list, Okitsu Kazuki is the other male voice actor, and I actually didn't. I haven't heard that many of his roles personally, so I didn't have a good grasp on his voice until I've noticed that he voiced Archimedes in Fate Extella, and that kind of does feel like something that, if he uses a similar voice to that, I could kind of see Satanael.
Yeah, I actually expected something like Sakurai voicing Satanael. And Okitsu-san is also known for his role of Jonathan Joestar,
which is a very hot-blooded character.
Yes, and it doesn't really remind anyone of Satanael.
Yeah, exactly. But then I saw that he voiced Archimedes, and Archimedes does have, and like, if you've anyone listening to this has played Extella, Archimedes is like being a mathematician, of course. He's got a very kind of calculating kind of thing, and his voice does support that. So
I actually haven't heard him so far, so I will look it up later.
Yeah, look it up. Look it up later on. But basically, Satanael is like a scientist, and he's a chess master sort of character. So like, a mathematician kind of fits into that, I guess. So.
Going back to Ito Ken, so what I assume happened here is that Masada really wanted Ito Ken to voice some important character in Shinza, And the most important character he had is Muzan, but Muzan was an old man, from what we have
So you
known
made him
so far.
younger. So you made
Yes,
him younger.
and so he made him younger just to fit his character a bit closer to Itoken's voice.
Yes, that's possible. That's very possible. But though, to be honest, with Masuda being as open as he is about his Sayubita status, yeah, I feel like he might have tweeted that already. Like he might have tweeted that if that was the case, but who
Yeah, I
knows?
suppose.
But he might tweet it in the future.
Oh,
Like I remember him being very enthusiastic about Notomamiko. So it's like,
okay.
yeah,
Well,
same
I
right
was
away.
saying that because I actually expect to still see old Muzan in Pantheon in some way, and
Mike?
he would probably still need an older voice, and I'm not sure Ito can do it.
Well, we'll see. His job is to produce voices, so
Yeah, yeah. Like I said, his voice range is pretty nice.
yeah.
Okay, and that's the two male voice actors we have, and now we get to the female voice actresses, and this is where you can gush out, I suppose. Like,
Yes.
I'm
Yeah.
not as much of a voice actor fan, although I am a pretty big one, I would think. So I can't really recognize the roles just from seeing the name of the voice actors. But as I looked it up, got really excited about this entire thing because, like,
Yes.
the first name on our list is Okubo Rumi,
Yes, that's a bombshell.
and like I was sitting here like thinking, who did she voice again? And then I
I know some
saw
people would
her
shout
voice
at
in
you.
like every single Fujoshi I love, and I was
Um,
like, yeah,
yes,
okay, okay.
Rumi, I think one of her, probably her currently most popular roles are actually the fifth series where she voices Elizabeth Bathory in all her versions, her many versions,
Yes,
and Astolfo,
yes,
who are both very popular characters. And those, she also, but of course, her like you said, her voice acting career doesn't just gets reduced to that. So yes, she has many other roles, but because she has a very kind of cutesy, kind of poppy kind of voice, of course, it's entirely possible that I'm wrong here because, like we said, voice actors range. She could entirely be something else. But I think like possibly uh, the best character she could be is probably Sakura.
yeah, agree.
This is what most people seem to think. Though, any one of those voice actresses could be Sakura, and that would be great in and of itself. But it does kind of work because, pink hair, small, cute, very genki. It looks like it. While, so as opposed to like the other characters we've seen, like Tsukuyomi, who looks very kind of more subdued,
Yes,
quieter, kind of
more
Dynamite,
mature.
so
Yes.
mature, yes. So yeah, I actually, for example, so like, I'm not saying Okubarumi can't voice a character like that, but I do think that like in terms of typecast and because I've seen Okubarumi on stream and her natural voice is like that. She's
Uh-huh.
like when she voices Liz, it's not that different from her actual voice. So yeah.
That's always
Um,
great.
Yes, the same could be said, for example, about Inakuchi Yuka. Her natural voice is actually not that far from Rusalka's,
Like
and
her entire personality is really.
yes, she's a little pervert, and Yuinen actually commented this during the radio where she like read a line as Rusalka. She's like, "Are you sure you actually read that as Rusalka, not as yourself? I can't tell."
Yes.
So yes, but yes, that's about gushing about Inokuchi Yuka. That's like,
Yeah.
but yes, Okumarubi. That's very exciting. We're like I I said, we're not sure who's voice acting here. We think it's Sakura. Either way, very
Yeah, because
exciting.
the website just lists the names.
Yes, it doesn't
doesn't actually
put
credit
any.
the
Yeah, it doesn't
roles.
credit them. Yeah, it just posts the cast. So right now, it's just a lot of speculation on LPS.
Yeah, although it's a bit more likely to be correct here than whatever we think about the story.
Yeah.
Okay, female voice actress number 2 is Koshimi Izuami.
Oh. Oh. Koshimi Zuami is a lot more prolific. She's probably the most prolific voice actress on this list, and she has quite a few roles. She was Callan from Code Geass. She was Ryoko from Kill la Kill. So on and so forth.
Visual novel wise, she was Rosa from Umineko.
Yeah, that's actually from the anime too, and later on the console releases. But yes, she was Rosa. She was Yukiko in Persona. She was Yukiko in Persona 4.
Yes.
She's Karen Hortensia's voice actress in the Fate series. So she doesn't have English speaking fans might not know her that much because Karen Hortensia is a Fate Hall Ataraxia character, and All Ataraxia's Vita version, which is the only version of the game that's voiced, was never released in English.
In Fate Grand Order yet.
She's not in Fate Grand Order yet. She's only appeared in Carnival Phantasm and in Prisma Idia's anime in season 2 and 3, I think.
Yes.
So yeah, she doesn't have a whole lot of anime roles, but that is there, and Karen is a very memorable character. Let's see. If you've played the Atelier games, she voiced Lunka in the Dusk trilogy. She's Mugino from Raildex, so on and so forth. I think those are the big ones that kind of come to mind. I think those are the big ones that come to mind to me. Oh, she was on Emona in Eureka 7. Pardon me. That's a big one. She was on Emona in Eureka 7. That's the role on Emona.
Watch it, so...
Just look up her art. You'll understand what I mean. And she was also in School Rumble. As people have mentioned, she was also in School Rumble. So yeah. So yes, Koshimi Zuami, that's very exciting. We're not sure who she'll be voicing. She could be anyone. I think that maybe Mifra would be cool, having Mifra as Koshimi Zuami before.
I would say Tsukuyomi would fit her better, but maybe it's just because you have always Sakura on her CG and I just think of Yukiko.
I don't know. It's Yukiko, but she also has a lot of aggressive combatic roles, like Callan and Ryuko, and that feels to me like that would fit Mifra a little more because she's got a warrior thing to her,
and you have this bipolar aspect of her.
And there's the bipolar, yes. So if we have Mifra ever going into more of the, shall we say, the crazy, more of the crazy territory, then just imagine her screaming in Ryuko's voice. Mm-hmm. It feels like it fits, but we don't know. She could also just as well be the cat girl.
Yeah, because who knows what her personality is at this point?
Yes, yes, definitely.
She might as well be Okuborumi, so yeah.
She might be, yeah.
Right, so the next voice actress on the list is Komatsu Mikako-san.
Yes, to my shame,
she's not as experienced as the rest of them.
No, it's fine. Her not being experienced is fine. I think it's fine, to have new voice actors, new blood in
of course.
These things, especially if they're going to be main characters. It's going to be like a breakout role.
The roles that jump to me are Silesia from Recreators, and
Yeah.
Lupus Regina from Overlord.
Yeah.
Those are the two main ones that I at least recognize.
Yeah, yeah. I've been kind of out of loop with anime over the last few years, so
Same.
yeah. So like she and that's and it just happens to coincide with the with with when she became popular. But
Yeah, yeah,
like, but she
basically.
is very popular. Like she's in Snafu. She's in Shokugeki no Soma. Uh, she was in Old Noah Zero. I just don't remember anything about Old Noah Zero because I'd rather forget the show. Um, she was in some character in Nakamega Kill. She's a side character in Symphogear. Like, she has roles. She's not some unknown newcomer.
Yeah, yeah.
She's actually been around for like
Oh,
eight
for eight
years.
years.
Yeah, for 8 years. So, but it's just kind of the stars don't align here. I don't like. I don't have a good handle on her voice, so I really can't say
Yeah,
much.
but basically she can voice both a bit more uh, cold-blooded characters and some Genki ones. So,
It could go either way.
yeah, but I would assume she's more of a Tsukuyomi voice actress than anyone else here.
Could be, could be.
Or she can be Mifra. I would say Mifra is more likely than anything else, but again, it can go anyway. And lastly, we have Seto Asami-san.
Right. So
So,
something I also didn't quite.
yeah, the two roles that I got written down here are Ayase Chihaya from Chihaya Furu and Jessica from Grand Blue Fantasy, because it's another gacha game.
Yeah. Um. That's about. Again, I don't play Grand Blue, so I don't know the characters that much.
Well,
And
she is just an SR character, so she's not really an all-star, but she has
oh,
been around for a while.
oh, there is a voice. There is a character she voiced that I know, which is Will Bell, and Will Bell is a one hell of a voice. She's like you know, she's an Atelier character from Atelier S and Loki, and like Rusalka's outfit in that CG.
Mm-hmm.
She kind of looks like that.
Okay.
She's like a witch. And she appears in all the games, and yeah, like I can send you an image later. You'll see what I mean.
Oh,
Uh,
okay.
but she's basically got a very Genki voice. She's very cute.
Yeah,
Uh,
she is.
um, and yeah, that's about it from the start. From like so right now, she was um. And she's also another minor character from Symphogear, as it turns out.
It sure has a lot of characters.
Oh, she was in Aikatsu as well. Yes, that means she's Kami. So yeah. Yes.
Okay.
Um, and she was Asagi from Strike for Blood. Yeah, okay. I know her, kind of.
Okay.
Uh,
So who would she be here, in your opinion?
Again, it's like it could go either way. I would think she could. Just by process of elimination, I think she'd be the cat girl.
Yeah, I
I
would
think just
say so.
that's not it. That's all I've got.
Yeah, basically, because we have so many new girls, which is a good thing, but we can't really uh, make any educated guesses on who they might be voiced by, because there are just too many options, and all of them
You
just
know,
happen to be great voice ranges.
No, it's not even that. It's just that we don't really have a handle on all of these all of these girls' personalities to
Yeah,
really
yeah,
say.
besides what we might deduce from the artworks. Uh, then again, we only have a bit more than a month to wait, so maybe we will have a trailer of some sort.
Maybe they might even upload it on YouTube. It's depending on the length. If it's like a free, if it's like a 40 minute thing.
Yeah, that's actually a good point. What would you expect of this side story volume-wise? Like, how big should it be?
I don't know because it's a side story. I would assume it's not terribly long. Like just looking at like the history of most of the side stories, like Paradise Lost's, like range anywhere from like 10 minutes to 30 to like an hour. Dies Irae's like it depends. Like I think the longest ones were like Beatrice and Kai's
Yeah, yeah, I think so.
and Goten Damaron, which were each like 30 minutes, an hour or so. Um,
And we have two side stories in Kajiriku Mikaku.
right, and they're both not very long. They're both
Yeah,
like
so
like the last one is like 10 minutes or so. The branches, and
yeah,
the
yeah.
first one is like 30 minutes. Um, but yeah, I don't know. Maybe it'll be like half an hour, like
Yeah, so it won't be too long, but it is a bit longer than most people probably assume at this point because,
Yeah.
well, you have like gods talking to each other. How long can it take? Well, apparently longer than you think because you also have these space travel or whatever it is, so it's a bit
Okay.
more
To
complicated.
to answer that question, look at the guy credited as scenario writer and tell me how long it'll be.
Yeah, yeah, basically.
Yeah.
uh, Speaking of the guy who is writing this, I suppose we might as well get to his tweets now,
Yes. Yes.
because that's basically all we have to say about the website proper. Well, besides the fact that uh, it's written that Pantheon is still a mobile game,
Yeah.
which people actually doubted for a while.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Masada left us with 5 tweets on the matter. Well, the first one is more of an introduction, really. He just says that, oh, we have updated the Switch website, and since uh, the new scenario features Muzan and Shinga and the rest, we have also published their voice actors. That's basically the first tweet.
Yeah.
And the second tweet is him saying that, well, it's about the kamis talking to each other, so it is going to be a bit like this. And he writes down the overall mood of each
Yeah.
character.
The quirks of each character, which is Shinga is a bully. Muzan is a problem child. The Morning Star is a capable person, a wise person. Uh, the Snick is a Snick. Gold is
Yes,
gold.
yes,
They're the same as always. Mari is, as always, a goddess.
yes.
Red is surprisingly worldly wise. Apparently, he's grown wise
Well, I mean,
in
he did
season.
see some stuff on his life.
Yes, he's seen some shit.
Yes,
And Hajun is a shut in with stranger anxiety,
yes.
and the Don is a cutie.
Yes.
It is
Both of them, I suppose.
well, yes, assuming.
So, well, there isn't much to talk about here, besides maybe the fact that yes, Ren might just be one of the most experienced people in this entire group because he already had to fight a few gods, and he, well, depending on the route which Pantheon took, he might have been traveling all over the world because he can't really age like Mercurius.
Yeah.
And we also have
The next tweet.
yeah, Shinga described as a bully is a bit weird to me because again it doesn't really fit anything we have known about.
Yeah, she's supposed to be really wise and everything and a really good leader, but like Masada keeps going back on his words.
Bully girls are pretty popular lately, I suppose.
Well, I will admit that like bully is a bit of a I wouldn't say it's a mistranslation on my behalf, but it's
Masada himself is kinda tongue-in-cheek.
It's tongue in cheek. She's basically, it's just like not so much a bully as it is a meanie, I guess. It's just kind of mean. So just goes to show that these characters are very multifaceted.
Being described as a problem child really kind of puts him in this inexperienced but powerful position, I would say, which doesn't really mesh well with the image of an old man we had before.
Yeah, he's probably like, which by the way falls in line with Fito Kentaro's kind of voice, because Fito Kentaro is actually just as capable of like being comedic as he is being like cool and menacing. Yeah, like if anyone who's played Demon will notice, like Kuro as a main character balances all those parts. It's like a hot-blooded protagonist, but at the same time, there's a lot of humor with him. So
Right. So that's what he says about the
content.
Switch website, but he also left 3 different tweets which don't really relate to the contents of the side story. He just goes a bit deeper into the structure of Pantheon. Yes. So the first tweet says because in Pantheon all characters from every age work together, there are some obvious anxiety about them just fighting each other, and it is to prevent that the Kamis actually work together. For example, if Reinhardt orders the Obsidian Round Table to keep it together, they won't hurt anyone, or something like that. Again, supposedly we are not actually a god in Pantheon.
Yeah.
We only use their powers to some extent.
Yeah.
And even if we don't actually have such and such god pulled from the gacha, we can still use their powers. For example, if we pull like Wilhelm or someone like that, he will follow our orders even if we are not Reinhardt, because Reinhardt himself asks him to be a nice guy, and he is. Because he does respect Reinhardt more than anyone else, even if he has to work for someone else.
And his next tweet actually touches exactly on that, because he says it's kind of been talked about like originally in Pantheon, but like the characters that like appear in the gacha are like they like go like what they say is like Lord Heinrich told me I'm here by Lord Heinrich's orders, so I'll do what you say, and like don't make me do anything to bothersome Morning Star and stuff like that. From the beginning, they won't exactly like be obedient to you per se. You have to like befriend them as you play, which is why what I meant earlier when I said that, like, the main character would probably need to be kind of self-inserting, because there is kind of an aspect of you, in a way, building a relationship
Yeah,
with the
building the
characters you
social
summon.
links, building the
Yeah,
uh,
which is
bond
kind of like,
levels.
yeah, like in Go, you have bond levels, kind of like that. So yes, you get to
Yeah, so
you get to buddy up with Wilhelm and Schreiber, which is fun.
yes, which doesn't mean that they will be buddy with each other.
Well, they've been buddy for 60 years, but that's because Heydrich told them to.
Well, and because Schreiber wasn't actually present most of the time.
Hey! They had this moment of bonding in eBay together.
Yeah, I suppose. Before Schreiber decided to kill everyone, as he does. And the last tweet is probably the most fun and the most controversial of them all, because Masada says that, by the way, out of all kamis, the one which is the most
Respected and
revered,
loved.
so to say, is Muzan. Moreover, the one who is the least
Suited.
leader-like, so to say.
Least suited to be a ludic.
Yes, is also Muzan.
Yes.
Which,
Well, he was called a problem child, I suppose.
and it does make sense that the people of Paradise Lost would respect power beyond all else.
But you know, this kind of these tweets together kind of make me think, because like, if you look at the tweet before that, it says don't make me work too hard, Morning Star, and there's the characters, like, when it says it, like, Muzan is respected, it's like respected by his underlings.
Yeah.
So it's like maybe kind of a hint to a gameplay feature where, like, you like, the gods are like their own kind of unit that, like, gives you some power.
Pretty
so it's
likely,
like,
yeah.
What
does make me wonder is that would you really expect the most unlikely leader to be Muzan? Because I can think of a few people who would be even worse as leaders.
Well, yes, like Hajun.
Yes, right.
No, but Hajun, if nothing else, Hajun would be good at, like, killing. So.
Making people follow his will?
No, not follow his will, just killing stuff.
Yeah, I suppose.
Like, if you want to kill someone, sticking Hajun on them works, I guess.
Yes.
But yeah, I think, like, it has been stated that, like, that Mithra is, like, the best leader out of them all.
Yeah, and that she's the one who actually mediates all the gods together.
Yes, so it makes sense. Now, in this regard, him being the problem child makes sense. It's also kind of makes sense since he's the one who shall we say, he's the one who spread innocent sin, and basically, in a way, kind of returned the world to the state it was before Mithra existed. His world is basically the most similar to ours.
Yes.
So, he's him being, like, perhaps more of a probably the most free spirited of the group makes sense. Mostly because, like, Satanael is, very calculated, and then you have Snake, and we don't want to talk about Snake, but he's his own kind of suffocating.
I would assume a lot of characters would follow our orders just to spite Snake to some extent.
Yeah.
He told me not to do it, so I will.
Yeah.
Well, we will most probably have Methuselah in the game, and he won't follow Reinhardt's orders. He's more likely to follow Mercurius's orders.
Yeah, he would. Though he wasn't exactly, like, the biggest fan of him.
Yeah, but they
But
have their agreements, so to say.
I guess. Um,
And you
but
also have Ren and his entire group of friends.
though it's interesting because you'll be able to see for this game how each character treats each god, and it's
Yes, most
interesting.
probably.
It's very interesting. For example, just off the top of my head, just thinking of how Claudia would view each of the gods is delightful in and of itself.
Yes, yes, right. Especially
But yes,
Satanel.
especially Satana, yes, because she's a literal angel.
Yes.
Much did she? Um, but yes, yeah. Wow, wow! Imagine a country party with Rill and Claudia. That would be
Yes.
a riot. Um, but
And
yes.
Ryle, I suppose. Like,
That's kind of
yeah, the possibilities are endless. You can have Wilhelm and Keishiro and Ryle in the same party. You can have
yeah,
you can have Ryle and Machina and Hajun destroying everything.
that's gonna be fun. But yes, that's so much. I think that's all for the tweets, right?
Yeah, uh, even if he did tell us some tidbits about the game itself, which is more than we got over this entire summer, I would guess, because we have mostly been discussing artworks and short story blurbs.
Yeah.
And while it is fine in the case of the Switch version, because that's basically all that people would expect, when the game itself is concerned, people are a bit more anxious about it all because Super Apply logo still isn't on the website and people still aren't sure if it is coming out, but since the Switch
They're
website
updating
does,
it. They're
yes,
updating it so often.
the Switch website does say that it's a mobile game, so I suppose nothing did change on that front, and it's just light missing stuff while they were updating the website.
I would think that after all these updates, you would have added it at some point, but we'll see.
Yeah, alright, so I suppose that's all for the news we have for today, and we can get to answering the questions that you sent us, which is, as always, a great thing to do. Keep doing it.
Yes.
And the first question we have is from Opera Defender. Hey there.
Hey there, Ben.
So, his question is there anything cooler than the Titles remix on the new soundtrack? We don't know.
I would tell you that if I had it, but no.
Well, I can
No.
say that we have Mari's refrain, which is really cool, and is not actually a remix of anything. So,
Yep.
anyway, real question though. Are there any Masada characters you specifically dislike? Not as in you hate them because they're evil, you just dislike having them on screen, they're boring, etc. That's a tough question to answer
Yeah.
because it's like saying which one of your children do you like the least. Well,
um.
I suppose I can say like Volker was not really a great character
Yeah. Yeah.
and stuff like that.
I also have personal reasons to not like him.
I suppose we can mention like no here.
Um. Yeah. Yeah. I guess no works. Like in terms of no isn't even boring. That's the thing about no. He's not boring. He's just kind of tiresome because he's like bad shit happens to him, and like the story seems to be geared around stomping on him as hard as possible.
Pretty much.
And I guess the intent was to make him kind of be more of like an abandoned puppy kind of thing. But I don't know, I just didn't like him. I also didn't like his general relationship with Ast, which is a shame because like Ast isn't a bad character, Astaroth. But I don't know, I just didn't. I just the problem is just he's contrasted with Ryle, and Ryle is good.
Yes, yes,
I just want to see. I just want to go back to Ryle doing cool things, and instead I'm just watching this guy getting kicked into the mud.
Although I do have to say that No's character doesn't feel like unreal or anything like that.
I don't know.
He's pretty relatable. It's just that you read this story about him worrying about his sister, about him trying to make ends meet, and you're like, you have no idea
What's waiting for you?
what's
No,
waiting for you. Yeah.
no. The thing is that, like, again, he's like contrasted to Ryle, and Ryle is like starts the story off as cool, super powered. Like, he's not. Nobody tells him what to do. But he has a soft heart, and like there's
He's a
Rill,
bit
who,
like Wilhelm in that regard.
and Rill is like there, and whenever Rill tells him to do something, he does it whether he wants to or not. And
And
he's
you
kind of
have Annis, you have Carmine.
yeah, and you have him fighting against, and right in the first chapter of the game, you have him fighting against Judas, who is he's a Renyama character, so you're in
Yes,
for fun.
yes.
And then you go to this guy who is terribly weak, and the first thing you see of him is him having to pick between having between paying for having Anastasia when having his leg cut off or not,
Yes.
whether he wants it to hurt or not. So like it's not. It's a little. He's terribly weak, and even though he does get stronger over the course of the story, he's still relatively weak. It's like, yeah.
So yeah, look forward to him haunting your roles in Pantheon.
Yeah, well, we'll see if the body chopper gets in Pantheon. But
I
yeah,
suppose he could like heal other characters.
in that regard, I think also Sophia is a bit kind of not really interesting. Sophia is a sister. She's not terribly interesting. I feel like she's more of a MacGuffin than anything else in a way. She does have
Yeah,
a
yeah,
character.
basically.
I mean, she is a character. She has a personality, but it's terribly bland because she's a She's a sheltered girl. So it's like,
She's like Ray uh, from you,
from what?
from Evangelion.
Oh, no, she's not Ray. She's not exactly Ray. No, I wouldn't say that. She's a doting little sister, but like she's sheltered, and she's like, oh, and like Ryle, is lying to her and stuff like that. Like he's not telling her about how much he's suffering for her, etc., etc. It's like, I know, I don't know.
So yeah, I would say that the worst characters really do come from Paradise Lost, simply because Masada was not as experienced as he is today.
Yeah.
So
The crime lords, by the way, are also like that. I didn't particularly like
yeah,
seeing them.
yeah, they're just kind of there.
Yeah, and then they're not.
Okay then. Uh, I don't know. In Kajirika Moikagura you also have like the heads of the
The noble houses.
yes, of the noble houses, and although you have like Rokujo, you also have the other two who no one ever remembers.
Their names, yeah.
Yeah, it's Iwakura and Chigusa, right?
Mm.
But no one cares. Yeah. That about does it. I suppose we can go to the next question from. Let me open
Sugar
it.
the Shikotan, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah. Shurado Shikotan. So he sent us an album link and asked us,
You
"What?
sent us the cursed image.
Yes. What are your thoughts on visual novel world claiming to translate Kajiri Kamui Kagura?" Uh,
Okay, so a bit
this
of
is the first
context.
time I have ever heard about it, actually.
I
So,
haven't. I haven't. We actually Yuxel sent us. Remember, that Yuxel sent us a link like a week or so ago with like a
oh,
video
that was
of
the same thing, yeah.
that was the same thing. Yes, and
Oh,
okay,
right.
basically, okay. So some context. There's a guy on YouTube right now called Visual Novel World who is uploading uh, translated segments of visual novels. And right now he's focusing on Kajiri Kamui Kagura. Now, if you go into his videos, which I don't recommend, you will notice that his that like translation, saying they're translated is being very generous.
They're
They're
not
not
really
actually
even edited properly.
ignore edited. They're not English in a way.
Yeah,
Like
that's
their
true.
English is very bad. Now, what sort of should insert this here is basically a comparison image. I guess we can put it in the
Yeah, yeah.
description. I don't know, but maybe it counts as slander. I don't know. Um,
It's up to you,
uh,
really.
yeah. I probably won't. Just out of goodwill. But
Okay.
basically, it's like comparing his translation to visual novel reader, the machine translation program, how it saw the scene, and you can see that it's almost 1-to-1. So basically, what Visual Novel World is doing is basically running Kichuri Kamui Kagura through a machine translation and throwing it into the subs with very minimal editing. And that is concerning, mostly because a lot of people just don't know better. They
Yes.
just don't know. They don't know.
I'm thinking exactly the same thing.
Yeah, they just think there's also this misconception that translated Japanese work needs to be in broken English because that sounds like Japanese more, and that's
That's just another proof that it was actually translated, and the translator didn't actually come up with anything of
yeah,
by herself.
yes, which is uh, which is a load of bull.
It is.
Um, but yes, it's very problematic. You also see people like in the comments being very supportive, like saying yes, very good job. Could you translate this next? And the guy has also gone on to say all sorts of worrying things, like that he wants to translate Sakura Ikari Sakurai's "What a Beautiful Series," which is even worse, which is like an even bigger crime than translating Masada because her text is very aesthetic and very poetic. So mangling that with machine translation is even worse. Yeah, it's all very disconcerting. It's not good for the discourse, in my opinion.
Yeah, there is this kind of opinion that if people are doing it for free, then it's fine. They can do whatever they they want. It's their free time, it's their effort. So if people actually want to read them, then whatever. But what they are doing is a bit more dangerous than that
Yeah,
because
it's
they also uh, fill the niche which could have been filled by more competent translators.
yeah,
Because now that the demand for the translations of, say, Kajirika Kagura is a bit diminished, less people would be inclined to actually put in the effort to translate it properly.
I don't think any translator who's in any way worth his time or aware of
Yeah,
things would even look at this as like any kind of translation
okay,
in
so
general.
let me put it another way. Less people would be inclined to learn Japanese to read it by themselves.
No, that would see. That's not the bad. That's not exactly a bad thing because like having these things, like in general, having these titles available in English is a good thing. But no, I think the issue here, personally, is that this is filling the discourse with like misinformation. It does damage when you release something that's this badly translated. Because some people take it seriously. Some people take what's said here as like look, it's the visual novel said this. It's not like
Yeah, yeah.
and this is mangled. This isn't English. Like I'm reading this, and the only reason I can make sense of this is because I can understand the Japanese.
Yeah, pretty much.
It's like it makes no sense. It's entirely mangled. It's like every now and then, like some visual novels like come out on Steam and they're terribly translated and nothing. Like I think one's even in the
Yeah.
rounds right now. Then that's actually better than this. Like those visual novels that are currently getting trashed on Twitter.
I
They're,
really
they're
don't know about that.
no, they are because even then there's some semblance of logic. This is entirely machine translated and it's horrible. Um, yeah. So those are my thoughts. My thoughts are this is bad and
And really, people start to lower their expectations
yeah, we're
for
starting to lower
the
standards.
translations. Or
Y-
so, like for example, if I go to Reddit, which translates some Japanese comics from Twitter or something like that, people don't really pay much attention to the quality of translation. They are just happy to have it translated in the first place.
Yes.
Uh,
And this is a thing that's like true for like I see it a lot in like stuff like Fate Grand Order comics and in general, like even small things like funny comics, but also in bigger things like actual translations. And people are like, "Yeah, but I have nothing else. What am I supposed to do?" So like, it's a very defeatist kind of point of view, saying that you're like in the mercy of bad translators. Uh, you should um, you should expect more. You should demand more. You should demand better. And I think that like people going around and telling this person in visual novel world that his translations are good and you should keep going and you should translate your favorite series are actually doing more harm than good. And like personally, I would call this person out, but I'm not going to go into that because
yeah, okay. Basically, chances are, if you have a dictionary on your hands, then you can do a better job
yeah, yeah.
by just processing the words separately. That about does it, I suppose. The second question from Shirado Shikotan is it goes back to our speculation a while ago. What kind of relationship does Mifra and the little boy have? It can be speculated that the little boy is Muzan. Also, Mifra looks more friendly and caring, judging from the artwork, so could that be her real personality before she took the throne and became cold and lawful? We
We answered most of that
Yeah, yeah.
already. But he did say that she like became cold and lawful when she ascended the throne, and we actually don't know that. I don't think there's anything to really
Yeah, like
imply that.
you would believe so if you have read Kajiri Kamui Kagura, because that's basically what we assumed after reading it. But after we learned about her personality in Pantheon, it's a bit less cut in stone, I would say.
Black and white, even I'd say.
Yes. So she might be serious, she might be a bit more playful, she might be both depending on the situation.
Yeah,
And this
I
character
think
might not
think
be Mifra at all.
I think like that what we've learned from Pantheon is that she's duality through and through. She's like saying that she's cold and lawful is assuming that she like leans in one hand, and the thing is she's both. She's both
Yes,
good and evil.
yes,
She's a
I suppose
duality.
that is
It's just
pretty easy. Uh,
I think it's just that people set her in contrast to Muzan, and Muzan is like considered to be evil because he like put the
yeah, that's not
original
really the
sin.
case.
And that's not even the case with him. I feel like all of them are good in their own way. You could even look at. I think most of the gods, except for like maybe Hajun, can be seen as such. Even Mercurius and Reinhardt could be seen as good from a certain perspective. Um,
And Hajun will have his redemption in due time, I suppose.
yes, we will have our wholesome Hajun soon enough. Um,
Will he cook
uh,
delicious curry? That is my question.
yes. But yes, I think it's not quite that kind of right that she like ascends to the throne and becomes cold and lawful, and that is that her real personality? We don't know. This also comes from the assumption that the cat woman is in fact Mifra, which again we don't know for sure.
Yeah, at the very least we have one extra female voice actress, and
Yeah,
it's very
so
likely that she is voicing her and not Mifra.
yes, and that's the thing. The fact
Unless Mifra has two voices for two different personalities,
which would yeah, that's
which is
I kind of
possible.
doubt that. It's possible, but I doubt that because it's
Yeah, yeah.
you could just have the voice actors do a different voice. It's like, but I think that like the idea that they have different voice actors kind of like throws the entire theory of them being the same person kind of into, into question. I think,
Yeah, yeah.
but we don't know. But yes, and
If
like I
nothing
said,
else,
what
they can be related, if only because we did have sensories voiced by different voice actors before, like in
happened?
Hajun's case.
Oh, yeah, I guess. Though we don't know, we don't know. Like Hydro's case is a little different. I feel like
Well,
because there were other factors
yeah,
involved.
yeah.
Like I can see how his voice would change. Let's just say that.
Yeah, okay.
Someone might want his voice to change, and his voice would change to fit that person's kinks.
Yes, yes. Basically.
Yeah. Uh, so we
Okay,
don't know. But other sensors that we've seen, like Carl Craft, for example.
yes. And that's basically the only sensory we had.
Yep. Um,
Okay, I think that's it for your questions. Uh, Apparently we broke a new record and we uh, recorded less than 2 hours this time. And I still think it was a pretty good episode. So, as always, we are happy to answer all of your questions, take any ideas for future episodes, although I believe we won't have much time for any extra topics before September, and after September we will have a whole new plate on our hands to discuss. But
yeah.
anyway,
That's actually a thing. If Masta doesn't actually post anything in the next 2 weeks, which he might, yeah, I suppose it's a thing. Like things have come out in like
yeah, yeah.
2 weeks. I'll actually won't be here in September, so
Yeah,
we'll go on a hiatus.
I suppose I can have like Steiner come
You
or
could, yeah.
something like that.
We'll
We'll
see.
see. Anyway, until then, do ask us any questions you have. It can be about uh, any of the Masada works. It can be about any theories you have. It can be about any particular character. It can be about our personal life. I don't know. We can talk about it if you want to. Although I would like to stay at least to some point on topic. Anyway, uh, I hope you enjoyed this episode, and uh, hopefully we will have more stuff to discuss next time, because this time was really a pleasant surprise, and the next time we expecting anything new to discuss will be at the end of month, when we will have a Happy Light Cafe and supposedly 3 new throne pictures and another update of the Pantheon website. But until then, I hope you will follow us on Twitter, on YouTube, and see you next time. Okay,
Bye
bye bye.
bye.